We're going to get started in a minute here. I'll give everybody a chance to sit down. And we very much appreciate everyone who made it out in the frigid cold, including you ladies, young ladies. And want to thank the Woodman Valley Chapel for their generosity once again in hosting us here. My name is Amy Bach, and if any of you were at the very first Roadmap to Recovery meeting that we did, workshop that we did here in, I believe it was early July of last year, I was here for that, and I'm going to guess was there anybody at that first one, the very first one? Okay, all right. So I'm pleased to be back here with you and with all these good friends that we have made here in your community. So first I want to introduce Carrie Olivier, who most of you know now. She's been she's our boots on the ground here for United Policyholders, helping with the logistics of our Roadmap to Recovery workshop series. I want to introduce Emily Cabral, who's back there. She's going to help if any of you have questions. She has a microphone. She is our program coordinator. So Emily and I came out on Tuesday, and I got my first experience driving a truck in snow and ice in sub-zero temperatures. We did a workshop up in Boulder for flood survivors, people whose homes were damaged in the floods last September or destroyed. And then we did another one last night in Lyons, and now we are here. And we were a little nervous because we did keep looking at the weather. We thought, boy, it's so cold up there, but it was even colder down here. So congratulations on making it out. I want to introduce Michael Cohen, who is an attorney from the Los Angeles area. He's originally from Oklahoma. And we'll be telling you a little bit more about him in a minute. And then we also have Jim Fields, who traveled here from Texas. And he is an indoor air quality expert. And I don't know, actually, I might not have said that right. Is that what's your technical, how do you describe yourself?
Swab testing and vacuum pump testing, air quality testing, so all of that.
Okay, I just wasn't sure you're at an event, somebody says, what do you do for a living? But I think you have a long way of explaining it. Okay, so, and then I want to acknowledge Commissioner Darrell Glenn, your local representative. Commissioner, did you want to say a few words? I think that you do. Welcome and thank you for being with us.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out on this nice warm day. It's actually warmer than last night, so it's unbelievable. You get up and it's only minus 15, really. This is Colorado. But I do want to make sure that you we have our monthly recovery meeting, and our February meeting on the 29th. We're actually going to have the county assessor that's going to present very early in the program. A lot of people have probably received their property tax statements, and there are a lot of concerns, questions with regard to that. He's actually getting a lot of phone calls, so he's going to be proactive. He's going to be at that February meeting, and again, it's Wednesday, 5:30 to 7:30 at our Acres facility out there. And he's going to be there to be able to address the questions and kind of go through that whole evaluation process. So I want to make sure that you put that down. Let your friends and family members know that that's a good meeting to attend. But again, I really am thankful for the work that United Policyholders have done. Great partners. We're learning a lot. We still have a long way to go, but when you're looking at the numbers as far as rebuilding within the forest, we're ahead of schedule. We have a lot of issues that we still need to address, but just want to make sure you know that I'm still here. We're working. This is still my top priority. And if you have any concerns, questions, just give me a call, and we'll work those. So thank you very much, and hopefully you have a good evening tonight.
Thank you so much, Commissioner, and it really is such a pleasure to work with you and the county. And I want to also acknowledge R.C. Smith, who's the county recovery manager, and Nancy up there on video, also with the county, making sure that all your neighbors will have the benefit of the information we're going to be providing tonight, and also our friends at Aspen Point, who have been part of the recovery effort and are a resource for any of you who are here tonight. So if you don't know about the services they provide, I encourage you to chat with them after the program. So if we can get the PowerPoint up, that would be great.
I think just wiggle the mouse.
Okay, and I also want to acknowledge our two volunteers who are back there with the United Policyholders shirts, which always makes my heart beat a little happier when I see volunteers wearing our shirts. Masami and Jan are themselves fire survivors, and they from the Waldo Canyon. So the year before yours, of course, you all know about that. And of course, the Waldo Canyon community has been a great resource for all of you in sharing a lot of their lessons learned and strategies, and also just being a source of, I get you, I'm with you. There's a certain way in which people who've been impacted by a wildfire feel that, people who have not had that very powerful challenge don't understand it. So it's great to have people that do understand it. Whether you're partial or whether you've lost everything, it's a big change in your life. So here we are. I told you my name, but I'll say it again, Amy Bach, and the reason that I'm here is to help moderate a program that is going to address some of the very unique issues that people who've had partial losses from a wildfire face, and then to give you some guidance and some strategies for making sure that your home is safe and gets restored to its pre-loss condition. And our focus, as you may know, is on insurance. We want to make sure that your insurance policy is performing as it should and giving you the benefits that you need to get your house back safe and sound. Very briefly about United Policyholders, we are a charity. We're a not-for-profit. We don't sell anything. We don't sell insurance. We don't take money from insurance companies, because our goal is to give you, as the consumer, the person who has bought insurance and is looking to get the full protection, we want to give you the most useful information that we can. And so it's important to us to have independence and to be able to speak freely to you. And that's one of the reasons why we don't take money from insurance companies. We are very much in favor of the insurance system. We're not anti-insurance. We are not, we just understand that it's a for-profit business, and I need all of you to understand that the ads that you see on TV are one thing, and the reality is something else. The reality is that an insurance claim is a business negotiation, and we're here to help you be a savvy negotiator and get what you are entitled to and what you need. So, briefly, we're funded by donations and grants. The County of El Paso is very generously supporting the Roadmap to Recovery series, and we're very grateful to the county for that. And our work is largely done by volunteers. Jim is here as a volunteer. Michael is here as a volunteer. Carrie has done hundreds of hours of volunteer work for us. Masami and Jan are here as volunteers, as are the folks here from the county and Aspen Point, and we're very grateful. That is what makes it possible for our small organization to be a source of a tremendous amount of expertise that we could never afford to pay for. So we get expertise from our volunteers. They share their legal and technical knowledge with us as a service to the consumers like you that we are helping. Okay, our website's a great resource, and we have a lot of experience. This is not the first wildfire that we've worked by a long shot. We've been in business since 1991, and the first wildfire we worked was a huge one with 3,000 homes down, mostly totals. But we've done a lot of wildfires where there were homes that were partially damaged. So we are very aware of the issues that are unique to partial losses, and we have developed resources for people who have partial losses, and you'll find them on our website, and you will also, okay, we're going to have to go nice, and we're going to go a little slow here because every word's going to be a click. We've already thanked the county. All three of those commissioners are volunteers. Carla Hurd-Price, who couldn't be here because her newly rebuilt home from the Waldo fire has sprung some sort of leak, I think, some problem. So she's waiting for a contractor, and you all know what that's like. And then Don Meany, who's usually here at the sign-in, Masami, who you met. So just to remind you, because I am a lawyer, and because we need to say this, that the information provided in this program is for general educational purposes and should not be construed as legal advice. And our speakers are volunteers, and we don't endorse any of our speakers in the sense that we're not saying, you better run out and hire him or her. We're just here saying, we believe these speakers have some very good expertise to share, and we're very grateful that they're here. And it's always going to be up to you who you hire and how you go. And our website is a great resource. It's always there, 24/7. If you ever have insomnia, it's a great cure for that. But go right in there, and because we've been at this so long, we have information about almost anything that you might encounter in recovering from any kind of an adverse event, including car accident, disabling injury or illness, or a home loss or damage. We have an Ask an Expert forum that you're welcome to use. It's free of charge. You just sign up and you can ask a question, and it's confidential. And then we will farm it out to we have a nationwide pool of volunteers, lawyers and experts, folks like Jim who have a specialty, folks like Michael who specialize in doing litigation against insurance companies. So we will, whatever your question is, we'll farm it out to somebody that's got the right skill set to answer it. Okay, mark your calendar. Next week, there will be a workshop down at Centennial Hall, and Carrie will be leading that one. We have a special guest speaker from California, again, who, because we also have a lot of disasters down there, just like you have up here. And this gentleman happens to be a CPA, so he's a tax expert, and his home was destroyed in an earthquake, and he decided to become an expert in the tax aspects of casualty loss recovery. So he teaches other CPAs what are some of the hidden rules, some of the advantages you might find in the tax code, some of the dangers and things you want to know about when you're getting your extensions or doing your tax return the years following a casualty loss. So that'll be on the 13th. And then a month from tonight, we'll be doing another one of these workshops right here. And that will be on claim dispute resolution. We're going to have another very good lawyer from Denver, who's going to be here, Brad Levine, and he is responsible for getting some of the leading insurance cases that are in the state of Colorado. So he's been at it a long time. Very good resource. And then we'll also have somebody from the Department of Insurance, from DORA, who handles their consumer complaint hotline. So if you filed a complaint and you haven't gotten the service, that's your chance to say, hey. Or if you filed a complaint and they've been helping, you can say thank you. Or if you have been thinking about it and you have questions, what happens if I file a complaint? She'll be here to answer those questions. Okay, on the panel tonight, I've already given some brief introductions. You know who I am. And I do run United Policyholders, and as I said, I am a lawyer. So I bring a broad view, and I have a habit of asking a lot of questions. So I'm going to hopefully ask most of the questions that you might be thinking, but I promise if there are more that you can think of, you'll get a chance with the microphone. Carrie, some of you may already know, she has been an incredible resource. She herself is a partial loss survivor from Waldo, and she has made it her life's work in the last couple of years to learn a lot about partial losses, as well as total losses, insurance, and dealing with repair professionals. And she's really has a big heart and a lot of concern for people who are living in a house that they're not sure is entirely healthy. And so she has put a lot of time into helping people make sure that they get the right inspections, and if their insurer is giving them a hard time, she's been helping people strategize. She's got her own personal experience, 12 adjusters so far, I think, 14. So she's here as a speaker to share some of her insights. Jim Fields, who is now we have your job title. You're the president of National Smoke Containment Testing. And then we have Michael Cohen, who's with Cohen McKeon in LA, and their firm is devoted to protecting people and businesses from insurance company abuses. So I wanted Michael to come because he is the only attorney that I know who has actually been in court and litigated a partial loss claim dispute with an insurance company and taken it all the way through with a jury and a judge. So I thought that would be some information that folks have not heard. There's been a lot said on this topic in the last couple of years in this community and in the Waldo area. But I think, and there have been lots of lawyers who've come around hoping that you'd hire them. And I always feel like, too much information is a good thing. There isn't so, let me, okay, rewind the tape. There's no such thing as too much information when it comes to this subject, because it's a developing area. We are learning more about the adverse health effects of wildfire smoke, and we are learning more about how you can properly clean and test and fix, and how you should not. So it's okay that we're one of a number of events that have taken place over the last few years. Okay, partial loss. What is your goal? You want to restore your home to its pre-loss condition, right? You want it inspected, tested, remediated, cleaned, repaired, replaced. You want those costs to be covered by insurance, right? You want your sense of security to be restored, right? You want your home and contents restored. That's everybody's goal, right? It's pretty straightforward. But sometimes it's hard to remember that that's the goal because you get wrapped up in the day-to-day challenges. Okay, Carrie, why don't you, just because I'm talking so much, why don't you read this slide so somebody hears a different voice.
Okay. So, let me read the slide, but also I want to say, of course, we all know things don't always go in the order that the slides do when we have time to think about it, but that doesn't mean we can't rewind that tape too. So, thorough inspections and proper cleaning methods are all over the place in this community. Finding qualified inspectors, people that can come and see the damage, they know what they're looking at, and they're impartial. Qualified testers to come and test the air and use the right test at the right time on the right material that's going to give you the information you really need to know and document it. Reputable lab results so that they will stand up to scrutiny with the insurance company or an attorney or a judge. Well-documented reports for the same reason. Appropriate remediation techniques. we're working on developing some more information on the website for you about that, because again, you'll get, I'm sure many of you have seen, you'll get 5 different answers from 5 different companies sometimes. Air quality and soft goods testing. I've been working with Jim over the past several months to see what they're using, which is different than what has traditionally been used, and gives us different information and more information about what's actually in the air after the carbon is settled, and what residues might be off-gassing. And then cleaning versus replacing, which is the ever ongoing battle. So.
Okay, and we're going to be talking more about all these things, but what we're doing right now is just giving you an outline of what the issues are for most people who have a partial loss from a wildfire. So here are the hot spots that generally we see and that we have seen here. Overworked and undertrained adjusters coming through, and the total losses tend to be a higher priority than partials, which may be one of the reasons why Carrie has had so many adjusters. But you know, so that's a reality. And you know, you don't find what you don't want to find is something that applies here. That some of you just had your home inspected by an adjuster that the insurance company sent out, and he or she may or may not have had the qualifications to do the inspection, and if they were not looking for particulates or didn't know how to look for them, or if they were not, if they really didn't do a thorough inspection, you know, you don't find what you don't want to find. And sometimes that's an intentional miss, and sometimes it's just being overworked and in a rush. So it can be intentional, it cannot be. But I think what drives a lot of the problems for partial loss survivors or people, victims, whatever you prefer to be called, is that our cost considerations, right? It costs money to hire an outside expert, right? If an insurance company just sends their staff adjuster, well, they're already paying that person's salary. If they, you know, so ideally they could just say that's the inspection and it's done, right? But if they have to bring out an outside person, then they have to spend money. And the fact that somebody's got to pay for the proper inspection is what drives a lot of the problems. That people don't want to pay, the insurance company doesn't want to pay, the homeowner doesn't want to pay. It's natural not to want to spend money, but the reality is I think that's what drives a lot of the controversies and the disputes. What are some of the experts that people need in this scenario? And it's going to depend on your home and how close you were to the fire and what kind of windows you have. So each home, you know, gets exposed differently. But an industrial hygienist, a materials or structural engineer, a restoration contractor, a mold expert, those are some of the specialists that will be called for. Carrie, you want to go through some of the common disputes?
Sure. So how many of you are familiar with the term line of sight? So sometimes don't ask, don't tell seems to be the rule of the day where insurance adjusters are involved. And so if you don't ask for something, you're not going to be told what your rights or what the standards are. And generally, line of sight is one of those terms that can trip some more remediation that is required. If you had 10-year-old paint and it was faded before the fire, and the fire harmed one side of your house and not the other, but you can't use the same color paint because you can't buy 10-year-old faded paint. So the line of sight rule then may come in to help you advocate for getting the entire elevation or home painted. Like, kind, and quality, I'm sure you know that term. If you had a custom hand-carved something or other, you don't want a non-custom hand-carved something or other. matching, replacing undamaged portions in order to restore the uniform and consistent appearance of something, which is a lot like line of sight, or pairs. If you had a dining room set and some of the chairs were damaged and some weren't, you can't go and buy 2 more chairs maybe for an existing dining room set. So you have an argument there. Clean versus replace. Clean is always the first go with insurance companies, it seems. I was warned of that before I even knew whether my house was still existing. And that is the eternal struggle, it seems, for us. Payment for expert evaluations and testing. Again, they're happy to pay sometimes for their own people to come out, but what about an impartial tester to come out? And then allegations of overreaching and pre-existing. How many of you here have been told by your adjuster that it was a pre-existing condition when something was wrong with your home, maybe the windows or the carpet or something like that? So that's often you will hear that. Oh, well, that roof was like that at installation. And so you may find you need to hire someone to bolster your side of that story, because if you know better, then it's your home. You know it better than anyone else.
Okay, hidden damage. And again, the reason that we're offering this workshop tonight is because there are a lot of situations where people whose homes have been exposed to smoke, ash, char, and extreme heat are not told by their adjuster about the full extent of the damage, and they have to figure it out for themselves. And you'll be living in the house and you notice things, and that's where things can be challenging with your insurer when you start to push back and say, hey, I think you missed some things, right? So that's obviously why we're here. And one of those areas is hidden damage. So damage that you wouldn't see, that you as a lay person might not see, or things that you might not see because they're too tiny to see, things that you might not see because they're hidden under, say, an underlayment. Okay, so what are the common areas of hidden damage? Water, mold, smoke, ash, particulates, the air quality, your ducts behind drywall and insulation, which acts as a sponge, as does carpet and pads, underlayments, sheathing, and subfloors. And I just want to touch on one thing that was on the last slide, the overreaching. This is, I would say, the situation between insurance companies and people whose homes have been in wildfire areas is I don't want to call it a crisis, but it is definitely an issue in a number of parts of the country. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of litigation in Texas, which Jim has some involvement in. There has been litigation in California, which Michael has been involved in, where homeowners have said to their insurers, you tried to cut corners here and you left us in a not healthy place. Now, on the other side, insurers will say, well, a lot of people are being hysterical and they're overreaching and they are trying to get a new house and that sort of thing. So it's kind of I guess I should call it a pitched battle in some areas. We would love you to avoid the pitched battle. That is why we're here. We would love to we want to give you some strategies and information so that you can make the right decisions, get to a place of comfort and knowledge, and then if in fact you do have hidden damage, we want to make sure it gets fixed. But if you don't, we want you to stop worrying, right? So that's kind of where we want. We want you to sleep well at night and feel safe in your home, either way, right? Okay. So it's a difficult dynamic, I mean, homeowners are genuinely concerned, right? Even just listening to me say something about, we're learning more about wildfire, the health aspects, right? I mean, I'm sure a lot of you have been thinking about it. Maybe you've been reading about it. Maybe people have been talking to you about it. So you're genuinely concerned, right? There is research, but there's not a whole lot. I think what there is. You got two people right here, actually three, who know quite a bit about the research because it gets kicked back and forth in lawsuits. But as we said, each home is impacted differently. There has been a big shortage of experts in this area, and Carrie, to say that she's beaten the bushes, I think is pretty accurate. And you know, then it comes down to who's going to pay for the expert. Insurer stances, it's important to always to know what the other side is thinking. You know, Michael has some experiences about, well, some insurers are better. You know, Farmers has gotten a lot of bad publicity for their handling of smoke and heat claims. In some other areas, other insurers have been the bad guys. Insurers definitely have been downplaying the health impact. And, you know, they would say, well, we're just trying to calm the hysteria. But in reality, I think a lot of people feel that they are deliberately understating the danger of living in a house where there's uncleaned particulates and not healthy air. That certainly insurers are very good at cultivating friendly experts. You know, experts that will say what the insurer wants them to say. And Jim can talk about, you know, one lab that he's experienced well, he'll tell you, I don't want to steal his thunder. But you know, there have been a lot of successes in your community of people who have gotten the right experts, documented their losses, worked with their insurer, negotiated, pushed back, fought hard, been a nudge, spoken up, and gotten some success. Masami back there and her neighbor have gotten, you know, it's been a lot of work, a lot of time. But you can, you know, by arming yourself with information, and sometimes you have to spend some money if your insurer won't spend it to get the right work done. So there have been some successes. Okay. Now we're going to go to the question part, so we can really tap into our speaker's expertise. Let's start with Carrie. What is included in a thorough inspection in a situation like this? And what kind of report should I be looking for?
Okay, well, generally, the first thing you would do, of course, is let your insurance company know you suspect that there's damage or that your home's been involved in a catastrophic event. And most people then just trust that the insurance company will send out qualified people to help tell you what's going on and what to do about it and who to use, like they like to do when you are in a car accident. Well, they don't always handle it that way, generally don't. And in my experience, both in Waldo and Black Forest, from talking to so many of you, it may take a long time to even get somebody to your house when you've got that kind of level of damage in the community. And then, in my case, State Farm said, well, we don't really have time to do this. You just go find people and then send it to us and we'll review it and then maybe come out and take a look. And, but what should happen? Well, in my opinion, what should happen is your insurer should come out and do a full and thorough investigation, which should include experts, if necessary, in the field, such as field testers for certified industrial hygienists, if you expect that, or you suspect that there's smoke in your home. Once, you know, there's different kinds of smoke contamination. Wildfire smoke, like we had, comes in under pressure and under force, so it doesn't just sort of hang in the air and fall on the ground. It gets in all kinds of places. So you have to know to look deeper than just at the initial surface.
So the question, so let's say I'm a homeowner, I'm sitting here, how do I know what a thorough inspection of my house would be?
I would say that to be honest, the best way to know that is to go to resources like United Policyholders and other people who have been through it to find out what are the possibilities. or contact someone, a restoration specialist, a certified industrial hygienist, other experts in the field who can give you information, do research online, but trust your instincts first. I mean, if you come home and you're so grateful your house is there, and it looks okay. And I mean, my flowers were still alive in the front yard. I couldn't believe it. I thought everything was just fine. Then, when we were allowed back in for good, I took my shoes off on the floor and I knew right away, this is not right. You couldn't see it, but you could feel it and you could smell it. And 18 months later, I'm still dealing with it. So it's hard to know. So you push until you know.
Well, okay, so I tell you what, let's try, Jim, how about, can you give us your take on what is a thorough inspection in a situation where a home has been exposed to a wildfire?
Yeah, first of all, it is your insurance company's job to send an adjuster out and evaluate your home once you have reported an incident. That's why you pay them your premiums every month. If they don't do that or don't satisfy your needs or what you think they should do, immediately, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Go to the next level. Go past him, go to his supervisor, write letters to the insurance board, whatever it takes. You got to get their attention, and you got to get them out there. Once you meet with them, discuss your concerns, and you hear their responses to your concerns, pretty quickly you're going to see where you're going to stand in this claim. And most of the times, it's not going to be what you're expecting or what your policy calls for to put your house back in pre-event condition. So once that happens, let them come back and do their assessment and tell you what they think needs to be done. And if it's satisfactory to you, that's great. But once you get that, I would do my research. I'd really dig hard for the resources. United Policyholders has quite a number of them. And at that point, you have to make a decision. Is this worth fighting for? Is this going to be worth the headache that I'm going to go through? But I assure you, if you don't take that first step, you're probably going to get dismissed, or the claim is not going to be satisfied to your satisfaction.
So I know that when people hire your company, that you do certain testing and you produce a report, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Does everybody whose home has been exposed to wildfire, smoke, ash, and extreme heat need to hire you? Every single one? Somebody like you?
Yeah. Any company like mine, I think it's paramount, because the insurance companies will use the same people, the same companies over and over again, the same labs and all that get most of their financial resources from working with the insurance company. So, you have a question about it?
Yeah, I have a question. What is the likelihood that it's been 7 or 8 months now since the fire that you'll be able to detect these things in our home?
Okay, just for anybody who didn't hear that, she said, what is the likelihood that this far in time away from the event that he would be able to do accurate testing in a home?
That's a great question, and one that almost everybody has. They're afraid it's been too long and nothing's going to show up. My experience has been in the tests that I've done in the last 4 years that time is not your enemy, because the contaminants that come from the smoke are going to stay in your house They're not going anywhere until they're removed, remediated, or encapsulated. Okay? I'm doing testing in Bastrop right now, 2 years old, where we're still finding air quality issues with alvite off-gassing that would not be there had the house not been exposed to smoke.
Okay, hang on, I wanna, Michael, from your experience, what's the downside for a homeowner in not hiring or not making sure that their home has been thoroughly tested and that there's good science to offer?
I come at this from a somewhat different perspective. My experience with this is in trying cases that involve damage. Hello? When I'm brought in, it's usually someone who's tried to get a claim resolved and they haven't been paid in full and there hasn't been a full resolution of the claim. To answer your question, if you rely on the insurance company, in most instances, they will not see the full extent of the damage, because if they don't see it, as far as they're concerned, it doesn't exist, and they don't have to pay for it. So while Jim is right, legally, they have an obligation under the contract, and as far as every jurisdiction I'm familiar with, under the laws of the various states, an obligation to conduct a full, thorough, objective, fair investigation, including experts when needed. But if you leave it entirely up to the insurance company, you will almost inevitably get shortchanged, because they know every bit of damage they find, they're obligated to pay for it, but if they don't find it, then they don't have to pay for it. And something Amy put on the slide earlier is very important, which is insurance companies now do not train their adjusters very well. You give them some training, it's not no training, but it isn't thorough. A lot of it is not even in the field. And increasingly, they rely on the homeowner to tell them what the damage is. And it's a matter of the blind leading the blind. The adjusters don't go out there, they do it on the phone. They ask superficial questions. And the homeowners don't know any better. And what Amy said is correct in this sense, and what Carrie said a few minutes ago, you should trust your instincts, you can feel it, you can smell it. But the fact is, if you have training, you know where to look. For example, you look under things. The question you asked a few minutes ago, 7 or 8 months after the fire, will you still find the damage? The answer is, in most instances, yes, as long as you have someone who knows what they're doing. It will settle in all sorts, because of pressure differentials between inside and outside of various parts of the home and how the air flows. You can find it either in air conditioning units, or you will find it in heating units, or you will find it at different points in the house, but you have to know to look for it. And again, they don't frequently train the people to look for it because they don't want to find it. And the companies have different, in my experience in California, companies have come up with different strategies for paying for these claims, or excuse me, for dealing with these claims, and it varies by the company. No company likes these claims, depending on the company you're talking to or dealing with. They begin with the assumption that all of these kinds of claims are fraudulent at some level. I mean, you may have had smoke, but that you're overreaching, it's minimal, and I know from dealing with lots and lots of people who have these claims that they make people feel like they are a criminal. I hope you haven't had that experience, but I know several clients who felt like they're being, the assumption is they are committing a crime, they're trying to steal the insurance company's money.
Okay, let's hear Masami's question, and then Carrie, I want you to take this next one. What do I do if the insurance company will not pay for a second inspection?
I did have the smoke testing done at the end of my process about a year later, and farmer's adjuster was there, and she seems to be having instruction from somewhere that what they can test or what they can't test. So we found my own, hygienist from sources, and we hired them. I negotiated them for him to be paid by farmers. I did that. I had to work hard to do that because they usually said whoever they paid up that they're going to do not looking job that they want to be done. You know, if, like you said, if you don't see it, it's not there. And adjuster come and say, oh, you can look there, oh, but don't go to the windows. You know, they do stuff like that, and how can we counteract with the actions like that? Not only they are, you can say some of them are not trained, some of them are trained so that they can say nothing is there, you're fine. We saw a lot of behavior like that all over Walter Canyon Fire. You have any experience or anything to share?
Okay, so you're saying that there's some, it's kind of what I was saying earlier, that some of it is incompetence, but some of it is intentional. That where the insurer has brought their own expert in, they are controlling that expert and saying, you're only to do this and that. So this brings us back to, should the homeowner hire their own person? Or, as Masami did, find their own person, find an independent person that they trust, who's got the qualifications, and then get the insurance company to pay for it. That's the ideal, I think, for most people.
Yes, I would definitely say so. Many of us, Masami, myself, have had, you know, the insurance company, you make noise, the insurance company sends somebody out. They won't look in the obvious places that you would want to look. I had the exact same experience. And then, so, you know, we come to our question, what do you do? Well, it's my understanding, and I'd like you to add to this if you would, that you do not have to allow the adjuster to be there when your consultants or your contractors are there working at your home. It is your home. The relationship is between you and your contractor. If your contractor doesn't do a good job, with most insurance companies, unless it's a preferred provider with USAA or Hartford or a few others, they will not get involved and pay again for someone to do a good job. So you have a right to have your home inspected without them there. Of course, most of us try to be cooperative. We need to be cooperative. But there's a line, and you know, one of the main pieces of advice that I learned and that I've passed on is always remember it's your home. You don't feel like you're in charge, but you're in charge. You can say no to a preferred provider that you don't trust. You can say, no, I don't want the adjuster there when this is getting done, but they're welcome to come and inspect it another time.
Well, as a person who tries these lawsuits, that's, I think, a dicey proposition. Carrie's right, you have that right, it is your home. But you also have under the contract, a duty of cooperation. And you've got to be very thoughtful about that. Personally, if I was litigating a case, or if I was dealing with a case that I thought might end in litigation, I would, in an ideal case, have the homeowner pay for their own person, or if they can arrange to have the insurance company pay for the person they like, that's great. I would actually prefer the homeowner pay if possible, because then they know who is actually paying for their work. I would invite the adjuster, come look, come with us. It's just they can't control what the inspector does. They can say, here, come and say. And then what happens is, if an adjuster says, well, you shouldn't look there, well, how's that going to play to a jury or to a judge? Well, the adjuster told me not to look there, but I looked there anyway. I mean, that's just going to look awful. At the end of the day, if you end up in litigation, you end up in front of a jury or a judge, and you're having to explain what happened, keep in mind that frequently jurors are, even though when you take people out of the jury box and you ask them, like in an environment like this, or you ask them in a restaurant or any other time, most people don't like insurance companies and think that they're getting ripped off. But when you put people in the jury box, something happens, and they are worried about their own insurance rates, or they find they dislike the plaintiff for some reason, and part of it is defensive. It's a psychological mechanism. People don't want to think they're going to end up in the same place as the policyholder who got shortchanged. So they make up things, well, I would have done something differently, and I wouldn't have done that, and so I would have had a different outcome, or my company would have not done this to me. So if you're thinking down the road, you want to be as open as possible with the insurance company. Oh, you want to come again? Be my guest. Oh, I can't do it today, but sure, next week is fine. Oh, I've got my own inspector coming. You're welcome to have your adjuster be there for us. All the sweetest, kindest letters you can send to that adjuster. They end up in front of the jury about how reasonable you were. You invited them to come along, but you can understand why we want to have our own independent person just because, we just want better safe than sorry. Our kids live here and they play on that carpet and we want to get it tested. What are they going to say? But, so while Carrie is correct, I would take a different approach. I would say, come on ahead, but you don't get to control it.
Okay, Jim, how can I prove the inspectors that the insurer sent out were not qualified or were biased? Is that something you can talk about?
Well,
Or the testing, let's put it more in your...
right, the testing, and
world,
this is going to address your question, I hope. The adjusters will typically assign a claim to a company that will do testing for smoke or fire damage or contaminants or whatever. The number of samples that they normally will take in your house, maybe 5 or 6 of them. And like everybody said, they're looking not to find something. When a company like mine goes in, we do a minimum of 25 to 30 test swabs, vacuum pump test on soft surfaces and things like that. We get in the attic, we get in the soffit vents. We're looking we get up in the ductwork. 75% of the tests that I've done where I've found considerable contaminants of smoke and char have already been cleaned by an insurance company's buddy, that being Servpro, Blackman Morning, or whoever, I don't know who it is out here, but that's who it is in Texas. So it just, once you can show that to the insurance company, you have some hard proof, and it really starts gnawing at them, and I think they realize that they're dealing with somebody that is serious about getting this claim resolved and will not hesitate to go get legal counsel if they reach that point. Once you give them good information and solid proof that there was indeed smoke in your house and it remains there, the remnants remain there, you're gonna have a lot better chance of working something out with it. Not being said that they're gonna do it exactly the way you want to do it, but there are proper remediation processes that will totally eliminate the contaminants in your house. I do want to dispel a couple of things that were said. Smoke contaminants are not necessarily a smell test. Sniff test does not tell you whether they're there or not, okay? So 6 months, 8 months down the road, you may not smell it. You might not smell it when you came in your house right after the event. But a wildfire puts off 2,000 tons of particulate matter for every hour it burns. It's got to go somewhere, guys. Smoke events create their own windstorm because of the heat. It's going to blow into your house. It's going to get into every crevice that you have in your house. And most of us don't have airtight, we're not living in a submarine where you can shut all the valves, doors, and, there's no way for it to get in. So it's coming in your house. How are you going to address it? You have to remove it. And it's up to you to provide this information if your insurance company has missed it. If you, early on, tell the insurance company you've sent your CIH or whoever out to test my house and you found nothing, I would like an independent third party to do it. You have a better chance of them agreeing to pay for that. you may have to pay for it up front. But I only charge if I find contaminants in that house. If I go in there and I don't find anything, there's no charge to anybody. So the insurance company shouldn't have a problem if we bring back hard evidence that there are issues in your house that need to be resolved under that claim.
So Jim, do you do work for both insurance companies and homeowners?
No.
Okay. Why is that?
Because, number one, I think that there needs to be an advocate out there for the homeowners, and it's an educational process. We've never dealt with this before, guys, and it's a huge learning process, and it's a very big educational process to the general public as to what needs to be done next and how it needs to be done. So I feel like by not working for insurance companies, I have a better chance of being a good advocate for the homeowners.
I know we have a question out there. Emily, you want to, sir?
Yeah, how much do you charge to do a complete home test, basically test the home when you find something?
Our fees are typically $2,900. If we're doing it directly for the homeowner, we discount it and charge for a service charge and the actual cost of the lab testing. Each sample we send in costs $150. So if I do 25 samples, if we send in 25 samples, you're looking at a lot of money. So we typically send in 4 or 5 of the samples that visually appear to have, some type of contaminants in it. Once that is sent off and we determine, it shows what percentage of char, what percentage of soot is in a house, then we can go to the next level and take an air quality test that shows aldehyde off-gassing. So,
Okay, Carrie, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What lab do you use?
I use Armstrong Forensic Laboratory in Arlington, Texas. And I would like to address one thing Amy said. I have dealt with 7 labs, one of which, and I'll tell you their name, is EMSL, and the insurance companies love them. I could send them a piece of charcoal, and they would send it back and say, there's no char and there's no soot in this piece of charcoal. And I have sent some very contaminated samples to 4 different labs. 3 of them have come back almost exactly with the same contaminants. EMSL has never come back with a contaminant.
So, Carrie, I know that, thank you, Jim. I know that you and Diana and Masami and a lot of your neighbors have interviewed lots of testers and experts and have a sense of some of the dollar ranges that people charge. Jim has given us kindly his honest answer. Can you talk a little bit about some of the alternatives to, I know that you kind of lit on Jim as your favorite, that's why he's here, but talk about some other options people might have or other cost ranges you've heard.
Sure. Well, I found Jim because I couldn't find anyone at the time in Colorado that was doing the kind of testing that intuitively I thought probably ought to be done. And I have a molecular biologist son who helped sort of lead my thinking in that. But it's hard. I mean, most of the industrial hygienist organizations that responded to our fires here in Colorado had never tested for wildfire before. They might have tested an individual house fire, but they mostly did mold and asbestos remediation. And if you would do research and look at their qualifications, you would find out that's what their certifications were in. So I started looking further, and some stereo came back from different resources, and that's kind of how I found Jim. But again, it's a matter of getting involved and making sure that you talk to with any expert, whether it's a structural engineer, or it's an industrial hygienist, or it's a restoration company, do they really have valid experience? And not trusting what's on their website, but talking to people who have used them recently for similar events and are happy. And maybe more than one person, because that might be their cousin who works for them. So, I mean, seriously. So I'm sure you've all experienced some of that. It's hard to find people in a catastrophic event where everybody's looking for the same resources, and there weren't any to start with. So,
Michael, can somebody ever rely on the person that the insurance company brings out?
Yeah, I was going to say, never is a very long time, but generally I would say no. I mean, just, again, I can't say there's never an instance where they're fair and thorough and reasonable, but I haven't run into a lot of that in my experience. And part of the problem is that the insurance companies are very large, they're very wealthy, and most of the work comes from them on that side. So it's very difficult to find people like Jim who work on, for homeowners. There are some, but it's not very, very common. So I can't say never, but
Okay.
I would probably never just trust it off the bat.
Well, have you ever seen, in your many years of doing insurance and policyholder work, a report that was commissioned by an insurance company that overstated damage?
Oh, Lord, no.
Okay, all right, so let's go to the next set of questions. Making your case that your insurer should pay for, and I'm going to put this as a second opinion or an independent opinion, all right? We're going to assume that your home has been inspected by someone, right? So making your case that you'd like your insurance company to foot the bill for Jim's work, right? Very reasonable. Just like Michael was saying, your kids play on the carpet, whatever your polite letter is, your politely assertive letter, which we encourage you to write. Of course you want to make a case for why your insurer should pay. Carrie, what do I include in a letter to formally request additional inspection and funds to clean and repair my home? I know you've written quite a few of those.
well, yeah, this is going to sound like a broken letter, and many of you know it takes more than one letter, but usually, even for one issue. First of all, knowing your policy, reading it, and quoting it back to them. Line by line with quotation marks with the page. Full and thorough inspection. I don't feel like I've had one. I'm entitled to one according to my policy. Here's what I'd like to have happen. Then any documentation that supports what you suspect or what you want. So as an example, let's say jump to a different side of it, which is thermal damage, and say you suspect that your windows are damaged. And they don't really look damaged because they're not burned or melted necessarily, but they don't work anymore. Stuff comes in, stuff goes out, they're not right. And you've had your insurer come and look at it, and they've said, nope, they're fine, we don't cover that. Then I would suggest that you do some research yourself, and or hire a general contractor, a window installation person who wants your business, a structural engineer, just depending on how many levels you have to take it up to support your claim to get it approved. Obviously, you start with things that don't cost you money out of pocket and try. So you may want to take pictures. You may want to just do really simple things like hold a hose up to your windows and see if they protect your home. Take pictures of the fact, with like a date stream of pictures. Okay, you had your home cleaned, your windowsills were perfectly clean, and then on such and such a date, and a week later, there was a windstorm, and now they're filthy. And they were new windows. They never used to let particulates in, and now they do. Maybe writing the manufacturer and seeing if they have a recommendation for someone to come out and look at your windows. maybe what is the tolerance for the temperature of vinyl versus, say, wood. One of the things that's happened a lot with windows is they say, well, if the window's not cloudy, then it's fine. And so if the window's cloudy, we're just going to come and we're going to replace the glass in the window. Well, the problem may not be with the glass and the seal alone. It may be, like in my case, that the windows themselves could not tolerate the heat. They were newer windows, but they warped. Or it may be that the wood in the windows has failed. So we were told many times, oh, the insurance companies don't pay for windows, forget it. Well, I know a lot of people who got new windows, and it took a lot of work. But if you know, sort of, if you look at it from a standpoint of what if I had to go before a jury of my peers? What if I had to prove in court that I needed windows? How would I do that? Just the facts, please, ma'am. and look at it that way, because that's what the insurance companies are doing, or at least that's what we're told. They're always kind of looking at it as though, you know, they may someday have to go to court. And so, again, document. It's the same principles that we have in United Policyholders about everything. And if it's okay, I know Diana had a question, and we kind of skipped. Did you?
I think she asked it. But do you have another one? Sorry.
Yeah, one of the big struggles we had at Waldo Canyon is when we had our hygienist reports done, the insurance company came back and said, well, that amount of soot, ash, and smoke detected in our homes was not enough to have our home remediated. So have you run across that issue? And it's like what Carrie is saying, you have to have proof, and you know, part of our proof, which was a binder like this. This is our binder of proof for our claim. So I guess my thing was, what would you suggest to these folks if the adjuster comes back, or the insurance company comes back and says, that's not enough soot and ash that qualifies for a cleaning? How would you handle that kind of thing? Is there an industry standard that would say if it's over 5% soot, ash, and smoke, or whatever? That's the problem we had, was justifying how much of what we had validated remediation.
So Jim, before you answer the question, I just want to ask Diana, in your binder, did you have a report from somebody like Jim? Okay, go ahead.
First of all, I'll refer to something that Mike told me earlier, that they originally start with a 3% or a 5. And the more of those they see, they just up the percentage that they say is not, you know, covered. But from our standpoint, to put a house back in pre-fire condition, you didn't have any of that in your house. And I would stand on her head and pull her ears off if that's what it took. Okay?
And they just need to hear that.
Yeah, and
Counteract
the
that.
samples that we take, oh, I'm sorry.
People need to hear that, because a lot of times we trust the insurance company to be the right person to talk to.
I'll give you a one-word piece of advice on that. Don't.
No, trust me, we know that now. But a lot of people are overwhelmed, number one, as Carrie and everyone has said. But we need experts like that to tell these people, 0 was in my house before the fire, get rid of what's in my house.
Exactly. And I think if you take that stance, you're going to increase your odds of getting some reaction from the insurance company. They're going to fight you guys. They're going to fight you. Some of them will fight you until you have to get some legal counsel. The more you can do before you get to that point, certainly do it. Carrie has done an incredible job with several people she's helped in getting the insurance companies to do what they need to do. But there are times when it comes to get some legal counsel, because till you do, they're just not going to react to you the way they are to a lawyer.
And as I said, we'll be we will be making available some legal expertise in addition to what we've got here in the dispute resolution workshop next month. Sir, did you have a question?
Okay, I can go up in my attic and I can get the ash and I can see the soot in the insulation. It was white and 2 inches down is all the soot. They said they'll clean out one room of the attic and not the rest of the house. And I was livid when I heard that because, here was just a $7,000 estimate to remove all the insulation and they're only going to replace like $1,200 worth. It makes no sense to me. And I was livid when I saw this, and they never went up there. I have pictures, I've documented it, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to write my letter. Do I write it to the vice president? Who do I write it to get response?
Well, I mean, and then I'm going to pass it to you, you have to say. I mean, just to give you some framework to look ahead and have hope that you have to elevate and make noise sometimes to get past certain thresholds so that you become someone that gets the better adjuster, or you become someone that they don't want you telling all of your neighbors what's going on, or you become someone who maybe you do have a valid claim and they better look closer at it. But what I was going to say is, I guess I never finished answering the question about the letter and who to write it to, because we've had those questions here lately. And I can just tell you the order of things that we did things that seemed to ultimately work. You work with your adjuster, you cooperate with your adjuster, you be nice with your adjuster, but you politely press on. So then you go to your adjuster's manager. In my experience, if they're part of the catastrophic team, the adjuster's manager is not going to give you a different answer than the adjuster, because they are from the same team, they've been trained the same way, they've been being fed the same diet, if you will, of knowledge, rules, and information. So, Kool-Aid. So then you elevate it by, there are a variety of different things you can do. First, you can call your agent and say, gee, I need your help. I don't feel like I'm getting a fair shake. You're probably going to get nowhere with that because they're not generally claim adjusters. Then you can go to the next person you can find up sort of in the pecking order of the company. And somebody asked me, how do I find that? I've looked everywhere. You get on the phone and you call the corporate headquarters and you say, I'd like to speak to the legal department. I'd like to speak to the CEO's office. I'd like to speak to, nicely, but you just sort of be mad as blank and you're not going to take it anymore and you get some names. And then the other route, which a lot of us waited to do because we feared retribution, and that was a mistake, is get to DORA. File your complaint with DORA. They're not going to probably make everything okay instantly, but you're going to be heard, and if you make sure they follow through with your complaint, then your insurer will get a letter from them that will tell them they must answer some questions by a certain date. It took a lot for us to get DORA to the place where they realized the magnitude, because we hadn't been filing complaints. Once they realized that, they started acting on it, and some of us got some results. We got some different people calling us, we got some different adjusters in. The other piece I want to say is not all adjusters are equal. I mean, in my experience with State Farm, I will tell you, I have had 3 adjusters who were longtime employees of the company. They were well trained, they were respectful and polite, and they followed up. And I made sure that I fed them lots of information, and so they ultimately were able to respond to my claim. I've had 9 who were horrible. So.
Well, I have supplied my adjuster all the estimates before I started rebuilding on structures. $250,000 worth of structures. I got an estimate back from them for $157,000. which is lowball in so many areas. I found so many mistakes with their estimate. Do I go back to them and say, point out all their mistakes that they made in their estimate? Because right now, I'm out to reconciliation. I said, we've got to reconcile this.
Right. Well, technically, as a matter of good claims, I'm going to give you a technical answer, which is, as a matter of good claims adjusting practice in the standard in the industry, they're supposed to reconcile your estimate with their estimate, both the scope of the damage, and the way the process is supposed to work, rarely does, but it's supposed to, is first you have to determine the scope of the loss. The scope means the extent of the damage, what's been damaged, and how bad. That's step one. Step two is what of this is covered versus not covered, because policies have exclusions, and that's just the way it is. What's covered and not covered. Then the next step is price. How much will it cost to do? And that gets into the issues repair versus replace, clean versus, the various choices. In your case, where they just said no, they're just being unreasonable, and they're just essentially daring you, saying, if you want to fight about it, they're not saying this to you explicitly, but implicitly what they're telling you is, unless you want to fight, this is what we're going to pay. And they may do it politely, or more politely or less politely, but that's what they are telling you. And if we want to have a separate conversation another time, but there's been a real change in the industry, starting in about the mid-90s. And if you talk to adjusters who were around in the industry before that, people used to love being insurance adjusters because they considered it being like a social worker with money, right? Someone has a fire, they come with a checkbook, you need this for clothing, you need this for food, you need this for a hotel, for whatever. And it had to feel pretty good. And they used to have a lot of independence. There was oversight through supervision, but they had a lot of independent, allowed to use their independent judgment. Now they look at very narrow parts of claims. They have very little, very discrete, limited amounts of authority. They never see the big picture. And they're really poorly trained. And so they really don't know. And what they've done generally throughout the industry is create a situation where they can get people who really are generally good people to do bad things to other good people. But the reason they're doing it is because they don't know they're doing bad things, because they don't know any differently and they don't know any better. And that's another reason to be polite. You can be insistent, but be polite and kind to the adjuster, because a small but important point that Amy made earlier on the slide is they have enormous caseloads. They're overworked, they're undertrained, they're under a lot of stress, a lot of pressure. And even though the insurance company is supposed to hire enough people so that isn't the case, they're not going to. So making that person's day just a little more miserable than it already is isn't going to help you. Plus, at the end of the day, if it goes to a judge or a jury, at some point that adjuster is going to be cross-examined by someone like me. And somewhere in that testimony is going to be, man, he was just unreasonable. God, But imagine the opposite is, yeah, I came, he gave me milk and cookies. I really, I love the guy. I paid him what I thought we owed, but he was a lovely person. It's a different story to tell. The frustrating thing for me, as someone who litigates these claims for a substantial portion of what I do to earn my living, is what Carrie described about what you have to do. You're not supposed to have to do it. You're not supposed to have to scratch and claw to get what you're entitled to. They're supposed to do this voluntarily, willingly, politely, and promptly. That has changed, that has gone away. It is an adversarial process. And earlier, I forgot who was it, Amy said, when you're negotiating with, it's a business negotiation. She is right, that's what it's become. That's not what it was intended to be. Because the normal business negotiation, if you hire me to paint your house, before I start painting, we agree on a price of what I'm going to do. But when you call on insurance, it means something bad has happened, right? It is the only product you ever buy that you hope never to use. And when you call upon it, something bad has happened. A lot of folks are stressed out, they're financially vulnerable, and you're fortunate. I'm glad you have the time and the energy and the intelligence to put all this together to do this. Most people don't, and they count on the fact that most people don't.
So I want to take a quick detour, and I know you have a question, and we're good. Okay, so go ahead.
what you were saying, I'm asking, where is that line at when you know? Like you were saying, you know, with all of that work, because I don't have that capacity. My binder is twice as big as that one. So where do you know that you're at your limit, the insurance company has already, you know, shooed you like a fly and stomped on you and, you know, crushed you, done everything. Your house is still not cleaned, even though it's already been cleaned. How do you know when you're done with trying to get them to do what they're supposed to do?
Okay, you're gonna get an answer. If I could ask that you hold that thought until we have a section of the slides where we're gonna talk about dispute resolution in different ways. If you feel like you've hit a wall and you're done, okay? So if you could just hold it for just a couple more minutes. I wanna make sure that we do a couple things. One, I wanna make sure that that all of you got the handouts, right? And I want to make sure that you know that on our website, we have a publication called Speak Up that actually will walk you through the lines of authority at an insurance company for effective complaining. So we'll walk you through that in that document. And I promise you, we're going to come back to this because this is really where the rubber meets the road. You've already been there and done that? All right. Okay. Well, then let's do this. Do you have okay.
Another place to find the executives is to go to the Securities and Exchange Commission's website and look up the annual. I don't know that there's
annual filings.
There's a filing.
They're 10Ks and they're 10Qs.
Yes, and they list all the officers' names and generally a contact for that. And that's easy for us to look up. I've done it a number of times when I've been stonewalled trying to get to Company X's executives.
That's a good suggestion. Another place is many states, the Department of Insurance website will have filings that the insurance companies have to list names like that. But also you can come at this in a slightly different way. I think all those are good suggestions, and I think that's a good way to do it. But another way to do it is ask the adjuster. You know, I'd like to send a copy of this to your manager. It's nothing personal. I'm just to answer the question, which is, you know, how do you do that? And if they don't give you the information, you put that in the letter. I asked so-and-so to give me the name of their manager, and they refused. Don't say anything mean, just say, I asked, and they refused to give me the information. And Mr. Vice President of Claims, I thought you might want to know about this and be aware of what's going on, because I'm quite confident that you care about what's going on here. And, you know, they don't, mostly, but, well, because one of the things that I came up with this phrase a few years ago that really was just a colorful bit of language, but it's proven to be far more true than I wish it were. And it's called an elaborate simulation of virtue. Insurance companies have become highly expert at creating elaborate simulations of virtue with bureaucracy and paperwork and phone calls and processes. It must be fair. There's all this bureaucracy and layers and this and this and this. It looks so official. And they'll send someone out. So they can say we sent someone out and they were there and they took measurements. But again, if you're not looking for it, you're not trained to know what to look for, it looks like you're behaving virtuously. It looks like you're doing the right thing, but you're not actually doing the right thing. So I wish it were different, but I really do think frequently that's what's going on.
Okay, so the reason I want to hold the thought and come back to, you know, when do you hire a lawyer and how and all that stuff is because, you know, I'm a consumer advocate full time, but I was a litigator, and I know, you know, I've been in courtrooms with insurance companies, and one of the reasons I brought Michael here is because I want to make sure that all of you have all your ducks in a row, right? If you do have to go that route, I want to make sure that your files look good, that you have, as a homeowner, that you have fulfilled your duty to cooperate, you have allowed the insurer to inspect, you've given them a chance to do the right thing, but you haven't been a pushover, and you have documented your loss. Whatever holes they left, you filled in. because it's your home and you want to make sure that you fully understood all the damage, right? So I just want to make sure before we leave this subject, and we have Jim here and we have Carrie here, let's make sure we know what should be in your binder, okay? Because awesome, but some of you may not have a binder. So I want to make sure that we know what data you should have at this point about your house, okay? So if you could just hold that for a second and let Jim tackle these 3 questions real quick.
Okay, and y'all hang with it. We don't want to lose your attention because I think before it's over, we're going to touch on everything that y'all want us to touch on. And also, I'm available after the meeting to visit with you one-on-one if you have any individual questions we don't answer. What items and locations need to be inspected, swab, tested, and how? Well, my website answers all of that, but basically you need to look at areas where there could be smoke penetration in the house. Weep holes, windows, doors.
What's a weep hole?
Oh, it's a little bitty hole they put around the bottom of the brick of your foundation. It just kind of lets your insulation breathe so you don't get mold in there and things like that. But we can test a lot of people have asked, what about the inside insulation in my walls, okay? Typically, we test the outside walls of your house, okay? We do a core sampling, we take the insulation out, we swab it or we send a piece to the lab. They analyze it and tell you whether it's contaminated. And if it is, you got to take out that wall from the inside, and you need to spray a sealant inside that wall before you re-insulate.
So how do they go, if obviously you're here, but let's say you're not available, or how would a person find a certified industrial hygienist? Is there a website?
You can go on the internet and find almost every lab will have a certified industrial hygienist on staff, and they're qualified to analyze the information. Some of them will come out themselves, but typically they rely on people like myself to do the testing based on a protocol that has been established between them and my company.
So first you find the tester, and
right.
Okay, who works with an industrial hygienist. Okay.
And I just wanted to say, how do you know where their allegiances are, right? Well, for one thing, ask them the question Amy asked. Do you do work for insurance companies? What percentage of your work is for insurance companies? The interesting thing I found is when the insurance company finally agreed to do testing in my home with a hygienist, which I had asked for since like the day after the fire, and it took them 8 months before they suddenly wanted to do it. Then they kind of were doing it as a threat. Well, we're going to send somebody in. And I was like, yay. But then I looked at who they were going to send in, and I started looking, and they didn't have any presence of any length. Or there was no commentary on them at all to be found on the internet. I don't know how somebody wipes that out of the earth, but there was nothing to be found. And sometimes no news is bad news. And so I said, no, I don't want them. And then, well, we're going to send this great company from California. Well, I called them, I did I asked them a ton of questions, and I finally decided, with the advice of a friend of mine who's an attorney, let them do it. What do you have to lose? If you don't like the results, you can get somebody else in too if you don't believe they did a good job, but let them do it. So they came in. The woman spent 4 hours in my house. I am sure they spent $5,000 sending this person to my house to deny $4,000 worth of carpet. But ultimately, I was there with her the whole time, and she touched a whole bunch of spots, but ultimately she would not take, for example, the areas that Jim pointed out. refused to do it.
Okay, so that's an incomplete.
But so look,
Okay.
ask questions, find somebody who's used them, really find out where they get their bread and butter, and are they truly independent if you're going to pay for them to come into your house. Do the best you can. It's not perfect.
Okay, and Jim, do you feel that so it has to be, that the test results have to be written up in a report, and does that cost extra?
Typically, anybody used is going to provide you with a summary report that is going to kind of give an overview of what they did. We give a background of, this property was involved in a wildfire in Black Forest on these dates, and it burned for this many days. The people were displaced for this amount of time. When they came back, they smelled smoke. The insurance company came in and tested, but then we did further testing, and these are the contaminants that we found still present in this house. So yes, I think that's paramount in
to get
the
a narrative
process.
report.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's move on briefly so we make sure we cover the other part of damage, which is documenting damage from extreme heat. We know that wildfire heat is erratic. We know it causes external damage. It could be your stucco, your siding, roof and roof underlayment, windows, wood, and paint. We know that it can cause internal damage. We've been talking about that all evening. How do I prove my home was impacted by heat from a wildfire? Carrie, why don't we have you start with that one? Jim, you don't do that kind of testing, correct? Okay.
Well, generally, let me just first say it's difficult sometimes to see, and it's not logical because the heat is erratic. It goes in waves. It may hit, the wall and mess up your siding on the third floor, and there's green grass right next to your house on the ground that it didn't touch. So you really have to inspect your entire home. You have to use your eyes to really look closely. And a lot of times I think we don't want to see damage, right? Insurance companies think we're inflating it when in reality some of us don't want to see damage because we want to think our house is okay. So it may take a while, but there's still people finding new damage now that's heat related because when the seasons change and stucco has dried out or things have happened, that warmth, you start to see it more. You start to notice that, gee, I don't remember cold air pouring in my house through these windows like it does now. Or you find chunks of stucco on the ground next to your house that weren't there right after the fire. So how do you find damage? You look really well and you hire a contractor. You start with, in my opinion, the easiest and least expensive method out of your pocket, which is to hire people who either put that roof on your house that you trust, or a local guy that you trust, and have them come and take a look, but remind them, hey, there could be heat damage. They may be wonderful under normal circumstances. They may not be qualified to understand and find out that the underside of a roof, that really is what protects your roof and not the tile, protects your house from water, is damaged from the heat, while the tile is fine because the tile was fired in heat. I learned a lot from people like Masami and Diana and people who had homes up there right next to many burned out homes, that there was a lot of structural damage from heat that wasn't apparent and didn't show up right away. So you document it like everything else. You look for it, you take pictures, and you get experts. And you elevate, if you believe that it's caused by the fire, and that there can be big money there. Windows can be $50,000 plus in a nice sized house. Stucco can be, 5 figures. Roofs can be expensive. This is big money, and there should be physical evidence. You just have to find qualified, trustworthy people to come and be able to help you document it. And then you go through the same process with the insurer to ask to have it paid and elevate until you either get them to outright deny it, and then you maybe have an action, or you get them to maybe pay you for part of it, and then you have to go back for more. But it's not easy, but you do need to look for it, I think, even in areas where you wouldn't think, because the heat travels ahead of the fire and with the fire, and it can damage things. Aluminum and vinyl have very low heat tolerances.
Okay, let's get to proper remediation and cleaning methods. Jim, are all cleaning methods the same?
No, they're going to vary from everybody you talk to. One general contractor is going to want to do one thing, the insurance company is going to want to do another thing. But it comes down to evaluating what is it going to take to put your house back in a safe condition. And when I say safe condition, you know, if you have heat damage to your house, you know, you may have some structural issues that are going to show up. Your roof, if your roof is subjected to soot and ash, you're going to have hot spots in there. I mean, I have roofers that will get down there with a magnifying glass and they'll find hot spots where, you know, ash is set on that roof and burn it. And they can't deny it. I mean, once you get that, you're providing that evidence needed there.
Okay.
And no, the insurance companies will advocate cleaning. I advocate cleaning, encapsulating, and repainting. Okay.
You know, we talked about this earlier in the car. I was asking you, well, okay, so just take an interior wall. If let's say you tested it and you found the presence of particulates, why can't you just paint over that? Why do you have, you know, the insurers are, oh, you know, everybody wants us to build them a new home, and you know, so what about just slapping a coat of paint on there?
Okay. The particulates, acrolein and formaldehyde, which do the off-gassing, if they're not encapsulated, much like they did asbestos, they will bleed through any water-based paint. You can paint 8 coats of water-based paint. I can do a test and it'll show that you still have off-gassing coming. That's the reason it's prudent and imperative that they seal your walls before they repaint. Yes, sir.
Yeah, can you speak a little more about this? I didn't have any trouble with the insurance company admitting that there was smoke damage. I had smoke in my insulation in the attic. They took all the insulation out, they sprayed a sealer in there. They did the same for all my walls and carpet, took all that out. They sprayed sealer on the walls and repainted. Is that generally sufficient? What more should I think about? What more should I look for?
First of all, you're a lucky man. Okay? You know, and it sounds, and God bless you for getting them to do that, but it sounds to me like their protocol for their remediation has been proper. What they do to the soft surfaces in your house? Did they replace your carpet and the pad and stuff like that?
You want to know who your insurance company?
What the hell are you doing here is what I want to know.
No, that's pretty.
No, that's a great question, and it sounds to me like whoever you're dealing with is doing a good job and treating you well. And I wish everybody could say that, but
isn't that kind of the standard of care?
it is a proper remediation protocol. And the reason we know that is because houses we have tested where the claim has been settled, and we have done they have hired a contractor to remediate and done exactly what you're saying, we go back in and do a test afterwards, and we show no contaminants. So we give the people a clearance certificate. It helps them when they want to sell their house, helps them with their tax situation. And so, that being said, what you just described is pretty much what needs to be done for most houses.
Okay, Michael, what if someone in my family has a respiratory or other illness? Is there a different consideration for those families?
Well, yeah, no, because it's not
Hold it up.
what Jim said a moment ago is important and is easily overlooked, because part of what makes these fires different than perhaps wildfires or fires from decades ago is as more and more homes push up into areas that are hit by wildfires, you have a lot of synthetic materials that burn, and they give off a lot of poisonous crap. So what Jim says is important, and if you have someone, you or someone in your family has respiratory illnesses, your first priority has got to be your health as much as you possibly can afford to deal with that. So if you can't move in because of the health, then, if you can afford to have that option, then you do that. And then it's a matter of speed. But you don't want to be, again, polite about it, but you want to make sure the insurance company knows that. Insurance companies are so large, they're not worried about any one claim causing any kind of financial harm, but people have careers in insurance companies. And so if they want to be around for a long time, the fewer claims that go badly that they have to explain to someone higher up the food chain, the better. And it's really unpleasant for them professionally if they have a claim involving someone like a child or a parent who's got respiratory issues and it exacerbated their asthma, or they had an attack or something, they had to go to the hospital because of this stuff. It's that much worse because it's physical health, not just property damage. So.
My question is in the line of that, several people in the same boat I am. We, all three of us, including Dawn, have had pretty severe reactions. We were moved out of the house and are not after.
Okay.
We have letters from 3 physicians saying that we have to clean facilities.
Right.
We've done testing for 2 weeks. We're having additions of third one confusions.
Right.
We're still being told that we're being denied AOE.
Wow. Okay.
So we've been denied AOE for the additional.
Right.
Clean the house.
Okay.
We do that. But they told me that proof, I need to provide proof. I said I have already provided proof from 3 physicians, veterinarian,
Right.
3 industrial hygienists.
Right.
The proof is there, it has to have contact.
And then they just,
Where do that?
Let me just say one thing. I know there are many people here tonight who are in pretty much the same, or if you're willing to show your hands, if you feel like you're kind of about in the same place. I mean,
I have an electronic air filter in my house. My wife has got asthma, and they're not willing to clean my house because I got the electronic air filter.
right, well, that goes back to something, because I want to, if we don't address it generally, I'll be happy to stick around and answer your questions individually, so I don't want you to feel like we're not dealing with it. And again, I come at this from a different place, because when people come to me, it's because they've already tried to get resolution and couldn't get it. So I acknowledge that I see a particular part of the population. But I and colleagues who do this have a pretty wide swath of experience with carriers. They don't like these claims. They do not like them, they don't want to pay for them, and at some point they're saying, fine, you want resolution? Call a lawyer. I mean, they don't say that expressly, but they'll give you the letter, and somewhere in the letter, usually there'll be something, here's the address for the Department of Insurance. That's what happens in California. I assume there's something similar here. And maybe you're luckier here. We have actually quite a good Department of Insurance in California as things go. And Dave Jones, I respect him. I think he's good at what he does, but he's understaffed, underfinanced, undermanned. And they can't take on everything. The industry's much, much larger. So to go back to your question you asked earlier, what point, they're telling you that's it. And so you have to decide, whether you're going to fight anymore, and if so, with whom and how. But I forgot who mentioned this a few minutes ago, maybe it was you, Carrie, they will spend, and I've been part of these kind of cases. I mean, I'm going to go to trial at the end of March in Santa Barbara for a woman who's, 82 and in a wheelchair, has to have an oxygen tank. And she bought a mobile home to be near her doctors in Santa Barbara. And they paid a few bucks for the water damage to her home, but it cost about 30 grand. And they won't pay it. And so she had to sell it. She moved to a different place. And think about it, I mean, they're doing this to a woman in a wheelchair who breathes in an oxygen tank. Okay? And so they don't care. And I'm glad that you had a great result. And I'm not saying that it never happens. It does sometimes happen. And I can't say it's necessarily particular to the carrier, although sometimes some carriers can be better than others. In my experience, it has less to do with the carrier than a particular circumstance and a particular carrier at a particular time. And here's what I mean. If it's been an okay year for the carrier and their investments in the market, you will find that their behavior for like a big wildfire might be better than in a year following where they've had a down year in the markets. And we can have a separate conversation about that, but the insurance carriers have found ways to tie claims payment very closely to their profit margins, but in very specific ways, within very narrow margins, so that there's great predictability to their earnings.
Okay, I need to cut you off. I'm sorry. Just because this is very important, but theoretical, and I really want to make sure it's already 8, so I want to make sure we get through the pragmatics, and anyone who wants to get into more of that discussion with you, I welcome it. And so, I know a couple of you people, it sounds like, are at that point where you're like, I've done all this, sounds like you've done all that, been there, got my proof. Where do I go now? But before we go to the next slide, I want to make sure we cover, we did talk about matching, but there was one other point that Carrie has raised that I think is worth talking about, and it's cleaning versus replacing your contents, because this is a very common issue for a lot of folks, and it may be, even though you've been doing well on the encapsulation and all that. Carrie took the time to draft up something in one of your handouts. It's called Survivor Speak. It's best practices. She distilled her tips for what she thinks is good strategy. It's very useful. And she talks about, with your contents, and you heard Jim mention ServPro or Service Master. A lot of insurers will send somebody out to clean your stuff, and it comes out of your contents coverage, right? The cost of the cleaning. Sometimes the stuff comes back and it still smells. Did you want to elaborate on that?
I know many of you, again, are probably at different stages in having dealt with this, but our experiences and those of other wildfires in other states that I've hooked up with through UP is that a lot of the methods that are used for restoring your soft goods are as old, wrong, and flawed as the methods that some experts use to look for damage. So one issue is ozone treatments. You'll hear that, for some reason the insurers will almost always add about $1,500, $1,800 for ozone treatment to, maybe it's because they can then say they've done something. What we found out is, first of all, it's dangerous and bad for your health, and your pets and plants can't even be in the house when it happens. But secondly, it damages fabrics. So you may send your beautiful silk drapes or your wedding dress or whatever to a special restoration cleaner, and for some reason sometimes the insurance company will pay thousands of dollars for these cleaners to clean these goods, and they come back ruined. But if that's their process, then it's a tough call, because if they're saying we need an opportunity to restore it before we replace it, then in some cases you need to let them do that. And cleaning walls and cleaning things in your house needs to be done before painting is done anyway, even if you are ultimately going to seal and paint. So you don't necessarily want to fight that because you do want to cooperate, but I think again it's being involved in using good judgment. I quickly found out that what they were talking about paying to clean the few items of clothing that I had that I couldn't successfully wash, I would rather have the money for, because I could replace them for that. And so I negotiated with the insurance company for replacement on some of those things. But as a rule, if it's logical at all and it's their desire to clean it first, you may have to let them do that. And once they clean the wall, you either have more testing to see if the residues are gone, or you look at the wall, and in my case, again, and many others, we have come to learn that there are certain things to look for. And if the cleaning process damages the item, then it's the insurance company's responsibility to replace it. If the remediation process was not successful, then again, it's their responsibility, as I understand it, to restore you to your pre-loss condition. If the cleaning they recommended didn't do that, the next step is replacement. So I had, items cleaned that were ruined, and then the insurance company replaced them. It's still scratching and pulling teeth. It takes a lot of time. It's exhausting. But that's kind of it.
Okay, so we've got, I think we have hit on most of the issues related to how do you know if your home has been thoroughly inspected and properly tested and or cleaned, and what kind of experts should you be bringing in. We have, if there are any other of these technical issues, now's the time to ask a question.
And one more statement back to his question.
Okay.
What else should I look for that could be damaged? Electronics, sensitive electronics, can definitely be affected, and it isn't necessarily right away. And you really can't effectively clean them. Appliances, the coils of your HVAC system or your refrigerator, fans, radon fans, air exchange units, things like that. And those things, little or large, you should be able to make a request based on the presence of, or the evidence of wildfire smoke in your home, even if it's 2%, that those things are not going to have the lifespan they should have, and they're not going to function properly, and make a case for getting them repaired or replaced depending on the circumstance.
Okay, let's take your question.
I don't know if anybody else has had this kind of problem, but our house was, the outside siding was melted. We were exposed to all that insulation. Well, the insurance company had no problem with, yeah, you need that replaced, and the insulation, but they also wanted us back in the home like that. My husband also had severe asthma problems, which he never even had before. And the doctor said, don't even go near the forest for a while. Well, we argued that one, dealt with that. But then, of course, they wanted our house cleaned like this. And you hire whoever you want. And I would say the people that came in did a decent job. Problem is, they cleaned it up and it sat there, exposed to the outside with the wind blowing through, you know what I mean? You have no siding. You have just insulation and drywall. Windows that are cracked and all of that. And it's like, I've told them now, I go, my carpet is like nasty dirty. I mean, I don't even understand how.
Okay, so that is damage related to your loss, right? And if it is attributable to the insurance company failing to do their job of doing a thorough investigation, telling you what needs to be done.
No, they did that.
Okay.
They allowed us to have it cleaned, they allowed us to clean the carpet. But the problem is, it sat there when we were arguing with them over who we could
Well,
hire.
but what I'm saying is, any damage that is connected to something.
Process.
Right, so.
What's your question? I'll make sure we're answering your question.
My question is, I've gone to them and said, this is still like, it's after the fact, the dirt has come back, it's blown in, and they don't want to clean it.
Well, that's part of the problem with these is because the damage that the smoke and the soot and the ash and the heat cause frequently reveal themselves over time, but also sometimes take a lot of time to unfold, whether it's in your situation because of what happened, the deteriorating condition of the home allowed further damage, but the matter in the air will take weeks and sometimes months before it stops blowing around and blowing in. And that creates a problem. And it creates a problem really for the whole process because the insurance company, and again, setting aside whether they're acting in good faith or bad faith, the way they think is there's a loss, and we remediate the loss. That there's a fixed point in time, and now we go back and we go and clean that up. The notion that there's this ongoing event, it may have started here, but it continued to, go on for a period of time. It doesn't compute with the machine. Okay, so even if they're trying to act honestly, it doesn't fit within the framework of how they do things. So that's when you have to say, okay, I've got another claim related to that. I'm not saying it makes it any easier, but Amy's right. It's still arising from the damage caused by the wildfire. You just got to say, look, here's why, keep pressing. They should do it agreeably, but part of it is they like to close claims for their own internal reasons. They want claims to be closed. So again, acting in good faith or bad faith, they just for their own internal mechanisms and processes, they want to do that and move on.
But do you feel like I can legitimately go back and
Yes.
say,
Yes, so because what I was trying, let me give you another kind of a scenario, and if a home in Texas was damaged, and it was exposed to water, right? The insurance company, the homeowner put in a claim, the insurance company dragged their feet, they didn't send in blowers, they didn't dry it out, and then a mold condition developed, okay? The mold condition didn't develop because of the original loss. It didn't develop because of the moisture. If they had dried it up, if they had done their job, which is what I'm trying to say, is if they had thoroughly inspected the warping and made sure that the seals and the underlayment was restored to its integrity so that there wouldn't have been stuff blowing in, right? While they were, that's what it is. So the insurance company in the Texas situation was held responsible for the mold because it was their failure to send in the blowers that caused the mold to develop. So it was related, but their conduct contributed. Okay? The insurance companies they didn't start the fire, obviously. It's not their fault. But if they did not put your home, if they didn't pay to restore or investigate and pay, which is their duty, investigate and pay, to put your house back safe and structurally sound.
I see the dilemma for them as they want us in that house. My opinion was we should not have been in that house till the outside was all done, then cleaning inside.
Right, so, and I will tell you again, there's no logic to it other than there must be some internal memo, you get punished or rewarded for a thing, or it's just the machine. But I have seen time and time again where they will do things backwards, excuse me, and have to reclean and remove things, but the point is, that may be the story. And sometimes it's the availability of the adjusters, there are a lot of different reasons. But it's no fault of your own. It was caused by the event, then you have a right to ask for that to be made right again, even if it has to be done 5 times.
Okay, so let's get to, I think, what several people were really wanting to get to, which is, okay, where do I go now? I believe my insurance company is treating me unfairly, like I'm trying to claim something to get ahead. Just want my home back to its pre-loss condition, okay? Our objective tonight was to walk you through what we talk about documenting your loss, making sure that at this point in time, you feel reasonably sure that you know what the condition of your home is, you know what needs to be done or needed to be done and was or wasn't done, and you know what you need to be made whole, which is to be put back into pre-loss condition. Now, if you feel like you don't know that because you haven't had somebody like Jim or somebody else come and help you figure out what needs to be done, back to slide 1, what has to be done to put my house back, whether it be making it healthy, whether it be paying the temporary rent while you couldn't be in there, whatever it is to make your home safe and sound and to make you financially safe and sound. Okay, so if you've done all that and now you're trying to think, okay, where do I go? We really are at dispute resolution, but we're going to do a little bit on it tonight because you've got me here, you've got Michael here, and Jim, who's done a lot of work in litigation. And the reality is that is the option that most people end up having to pursue when all else fails. And all else failing means you have spoken up, you've written your complaint letters articulately, you've made, I don't think that's a word, you've been articulate in your letters, you have gone up the chain. You can file a complaint with Dora, and I'll be candid with you. They will never be your lawyer. They, at best, will look at your complaint, and if there is something very obvious that they can find that the insurance company did wrong, and it has to be really obvious for them to come down on your side. Usually they will just come down in the middle and they will say, this is a factual dispute, we cannot adjudicate disputes, we're sorry, right? So even though I do like people to go on record, especially in the early months, my insurance company is not sending out an inspector. My insurance company is not investigating, okay? I'm waiting to hear back. My insurance company's delaying. All those are great issues to complain about because there are very strict rules in Colorado and we lay them out in our library. You have very clear rights and rules for how quickly the insurer should be responding and all that kind of stuff, right? But Dora's not gonna take sides on an air quality dispute or a cleaning adequacy dispute. They're just not going to. They don't have the resources, they're not gonna go there, okay? So what is your next stop? Well, it would be to a lawyer. And why did I bring a lawyer from California who is not a Colorado lawyer? So there have been lawyers coming around. He's not here for that reason. He's there he's here to educate you. We want to make sure that if you go that route, that you are savvy. Because you heard Michael say, insurance companies don't like these smoke claims. They have been thinking and strategizing, how do we win these cases? How do we win if somebody comes at us with one of these lawsuits, right? How do we win? That's what the insurance companies have been thinking. So of course, because I'm a policyholder advocate, I want you guys to win. So we want you to be successful. So let's talk about how to speak up, strong as possible, politely assertive, educated and empowered, asking questions, keeping a claim diary, unwilling to be shortchanged, right? That's where you are, proactive, okay? Your options.
Come on,
Go back.
that last part there about keeping a claim diary,
Oh, that's right.
that's
Very good.
really, really, really important. The insurance company on their end takes notes of all the insurance company
On its end will take notes of all the communications. And they're controlling the communication, right? Someone is on the other end typing in what's going on, and they can pick and choose what they put in and leave out. And they can editorialize. So-and-so is abrupt, abrasive, mean, rude, wouldn't listen, hysterical. The jury sometimes will buy that. They were just writing. Keep a claim diary. Just a spiral notebook, pad of paper, but keep it all in one place. Every time you call, the time, the date, who you spoke to, how long you spoke on the phone. all the stuff you
I
talked
have no
about.
idea.
It's,
I should have
as
been over
much
about
as
15
close
minutes
as
ago.
possible to exactly who said what. Now, you can't do it in a long conversation, but if there's something really important that they said, good or bad, put it in quotes. So if you have to fight about it, you will have an aid to memory. Because you don't want to say, well, I remember they did this. It helps, but part of it is human memory is imperfect, and something is just, again, about human nature. If they see something in writing, they show you were taking these notes, it says something to the jury, and it has a different impact. So, that's good about the diary. That's really, really, really important.
Yes, Diana.
Two things that I would add is, number one, we went to the news media. We went to the news media that hated that. The second thing we did that I didn't see on the list was we formed groups. We had groups of farmers, and they hated us for that. We were a force to be reckoned with. And I think we've been trying to mentor in some other aspects, but we've been trying to get people to group by insurer, or whatever, farmers, whatever. We came as a big group, and then we broke out as small groups, and that helped because everybody heard what everybody else was getting.
That's very, very important. And it doesn't happen in everyday claim circumstances. It could be just because of the nature of what losses are. But when you have an event like a wildfire where lots of people are affected by the same event, that's a great suggestion. I'm glad you did that. And it makes it harder for them to treat people differently. Much, much more difficult. And yes, they hate it because they do that, but they don't want you to do that.
And it is true that I think that the media pressure that your community was able to bring to bear made a lot of noise. I was at a conference with Farmers National Lobbyist, and right after I was at an event that Waldo folks pulled together, and I said, you guys are getting a really, really big black eye in Colorado Springs. Did you know that? He's like, yeah, I know. And so it's, some people have gotten some help that way. But not, it's tough because, your community, I think your community has been working on all kinds of things, and I don't know that there's been as much of the organized energy around this issue as you had. But, ma'am?
What do you do when you know your insurance company is treating you differently than someone else that lives in the vicinity?
Okay.
With the same insurance?
The question was, what do you do if you find out your insurance company is treating you differently than your neighbors? And this question came up last night at our event in Lyons, where a woman said, all my neighbors got their basements cleaned out, and my insurance company is not cleaning mine. Now, one thing certainly, you document that in a written letter. You sounds like you already did that, and you say, I have proof that I am being treated differently by you than my neighbors. And try to document it. If your neighbors are willing to let you use their names, they're not. But right, they're still in the process. Jim, let's get to, just because we're getting really winding down here. I want to make sure that, we get your expertise. What are some of the mistakes you've seen people make in litigation with experts? Can you talk about that? Or what is it about when you're involved as an expert, how does an expert become important in a lawsuit? That's a better question.
Well, it all comes down to depositions, and Mike can attest that a deposition is the way each lawyer from each side is going to try to contest the information that you've given them, question the qualifications of that person that's done the work for them and things like that. I think the worst thing you can do is not be consistent in your pursuit and not really document. Documentation is key. It really is. And for instance, your case, there's no reason they should deny your ALE. You have a certain amount of ALE, and until it runs out, they shouldn't be able to push you around like that. You had said that you had issues with your health. The air quality testing and the certified industrial hygienist will look at the testing that we do the levels of contaminants of acrolein and formaldehyde that are found in your house, if you may have children, animals, older people, and these off-gassing will exacerbate those issues. But if your immune systems are at a different level than, say, Carrie's, the CIH will address that. She'll say, even though this level is not as elevated as some, it's still more than the standard. And therefore, and she'll be an advocate for it. She'll write a letter and say, you know, get me, and she'll read the letters from your doctors and things like that. And then she can come up with a good conclusion that makes the insurance company more accountable for that. On your insulation issue, there's no way that smoke stops in 146 square foot of your attic. Okay? If it's in there, it's in there. First of all, they've already admitted that you had smoke up there. There's no way they cannot, in my opinion, treat it properly with the right advice that you won't be taken care of.
So, and by the way, if the experts are willing to stick around for a few minutes, and those of you who want to have individual conversations, but I like to stick to our promise and, you know, let people out at 8:30. Michael, it's been my experience that the right expert can make or break a lawsuit. Do you agree with that?
Yes. Do you need, I mean, that's
Yes.
short.
No, I feel bad. I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, yes, it's critical, and one of the advantages of retaining a lawyer, if you get to that point, is if they know what they're doing, they know who the good experts are. And by good, I mean people who really know what they're doing, someone like Jim, you know, folks who know what they're doing, know what to look for, and can be on your side in this. Or really, actually, in my case, I really want the expert to be on the side of the truth. Okay? I don't want, this is me and how I do things. I don't want an expert who's going to tell me what I want to hear. I want my expert to tell me, here's what I found. I work hard to find the people that I trust, and then I want them to tell me good and bad, and from my client's point of view, but I want to go with the truth. And because I think ultimately that does make a difference. But the right experts are critical. And to go back to your question, when we talk more about it after, you say, well, if I got to that point, which is, if you can, if you have the means to do it, or the wherewithal is to get the experts for every component of it, and then present it to them. And if they're still saying no, then you've given them every opportunity to do the right thing. And sometimes they have to be made to do the right thing.
Right. So I think if you come away with one very critical point, it is that in the context that we're talking about, partial losses involving smoke, ash, char, and extreme heat, getting the right experts that are going to be credible and professional and reputable is critical. That is what I want to leave you guys with. I want to thank our speakers, all three of you. Great job sitting through the whole thing.